Welcome to this time with each other. We gather in this space and call it safe space. We gather in this space and call ourselves grateful for this time, for each other, and for this land that we gather on. And so as we gather on this beautiful summer day, we do so with thankfulness and with open spirits and open hearts to each other and to whatever lies before us this day. As we do it, we welcome a guest speaker this morning in our friend Kenyo, a future ministry student and a part of this community, and we look forward to hearing some wisdom that he has to share with us a little bit later. For now, let us remember that when we come to be here, we try to come with our whole beings, not just our minds, not just our hearts and spirits, but living in our bodies and full of all that we are. And so let's, if we're able, stand. Let's sing. Let's move our bodies however we're able. Let's feel the music. Let's be together and sing with them. First with music, now with our spoken words. May we join together in these words of prayer that can focus our intentions and our attention today. Let's say these words with one another. We open now to sacred mystery, beyond our capacity to name, but within our experience to know. We open to the oneness to which we belong, to our deep connection with Spirit, with each other, with earth and all creation. We come seeking to dismantle the walls that isolate and divide, to shrink our arrogance and stretch our compassion, to open our eyes and clench our fists, unstop our ears, and let love flow in us and through us. This we speak, that it may be so. Amen. We light this candle this morning, as we do each time we gather, as a reminder of the Spirit that dwells in us, among us, and between us. We remember this day that life is one, that we are one, that there are not separate parts of us. There's not a weekday part and a weekend part. There's not a Sunday part and an every other time part. There's not a spiritual part and an earthly part. We are one, and we gather, and let this light remind us that inner light, outer light, it is one, and we gather in that spirit.
From the Gospel of John, God and I are one, said Jesus. With that, the temple authorities reached again for rocks to stone him. Jesus protested and said, I have shown you many good works. For which of these do you stone me? It is not for any good works that we are stoning you, they replied, but for blasphemy. You are human, yet you make yourself out of to be God. Jesus answered, Isn't it written in the law, God said, you are gods? So the law uses the word gods for those to whom the scriptures were addressed. And you say those scriptures can't be broken. Yet you say to someone whom God was consecrated and sent, you are blaspheming, because I said I am Son of God? These are words attributed to Jesus of Nazareth. May we find wisdom for our living. Black Lives Matters. The slogan and name of the protesters group who sat down in the Pride Parade in Toronto last month opened to all of us a new episode on the Black history in the social media. Now we can see people being shot in the United States, either protesters or policemen or even therapists for being gay or around Black issues. Statistics have shown that the violence against Black people had increased in the last years. Incarceration of Black people in the United States is the biggest in the world. It's followed just by Brazilian incarceration. Brazil has not been the biggest country incarcerating Black people for one other reason. Because Brazil is the country that kills more Black people of all of them. If you are born Black in Brazil, 5 dangers. If you are born Black, if you are being born male, if you are being born poor, if you have no father, and if you live in a risk place, you have 80% of chance of being killed before 23 years old. It means 80% of that population is killed. But where does such inequality comes from? Well, we all know 5 centuries of Black slavery. We all know of the Black culture being persecuted throughout those 5 centuries. We all know of the European culture of not recognizing that Black people have souls. They are not fully human beings. And many other elements, right? But the Black history is not about people who had suffered and been enslaved. It's about resistance and resilience. Is about how those 500 years have shaped those communities around the world and have changed their reality. And they have many strategies of survival. Today we're going to talk about one of them. It's about synchronized religions. So what are those, Kenyo? Synchronized religions are religions created to shape like the dominant culture, but in reality, on the backside of it, they keep their own culture alive. So talking about Brazilian experience, the Black people, they created their own religions. It's called Afro-Brazilian religions. And they were shaped as the Catholic Church religion, but in reality, they adored or they served or they sang to their own saints back in Africa. So, for example, they had, their saints are called orishas. So, the orisha that presides over thunder was later on called Saint George, because George was a saint in the Catholic Church that protects against thunder. The orisha that presides over the storm It's called Yansan. And later on, she was called Saint Barbara, because Barbara, in the Catholic tradition, is the saint for the storms. And it goes on and on and on. So this is actually a strategy of preservation and to pass on their own culture. So when the slave master comes to the Islam or wherever they are being tied up, and he complains, "Why are you guys drumming so loud?" And the slaves are like, "Oh, we are singing to Saint Barbara. We are singing to Saint George. Come and take a look." And the statue shows the Catholic saint. But in reality, they are singing and dancing to their own gods. So this is a synchronized religion. Throughout that, they use it to preserve their own culture throughout music, throughout dance, throughout food, and throughout many other elements. And that's how many black communities preserve their own heritage to this day throughout 500 years of slavery and persecution. Lately, we have experienced a new wave of persecution coming from the modern Christian fundamentalism that was spread from North America throughout the globe. And now we can see those fundamentalisms in the evangelical or the Catholic or even the Protestant churches. We speak so much about other fundamentalisms in other religions, but we forget to speak about our own. So the influence of these fundamentalisms have been present also in Brazilian culture. And recently a bill was passed where they revoked the status of Afro-Brazilian religions as religion. It means that it's another step on the disfiguration, on the discrimination against black people. So I was enraged, I was really upset when I heard that, and I was able to go back to Brazil this last winter. And I decided to have a step forward in supporting those communities. So besides having, the usual social media kind of, let's write down to the Senate or let's make a walk, this or that, I also decided to go and visit one of their celebrations. So I asked my friend if he could take me. He's one of the faithful for that religion. The religion is called Candomblé. You don't need to remember this name, just as a reference. And my first impressions were how they treat nature so sacredly. Everything that's natural has a place in their own life. Everything that's natural speaks to them and has an element of movement within them. And they feel nature very strongly. Also, the music they play is really loud. It's not like our church music, and we're like so considerate. No, their music is really loud. When you enter the temple, you feel the shock. You feel the wave of the air throughout your body. You instantly feel the music, and it shapes also your brain waves. You kind of enter in a sacred space because of that music. The food also is very important in that culture, on that religion. And they prepare the food ahead of time, and it is served after the celebration. But one more element is also important to talk about today, is the dancing that they experience there. They dance for over 4 hours straight. They don't sit down. They dance over and over, all those rhythms that come to them throughout all those, I don't know for how many centuries or millenniums. and they play and replay, and all that movement becomes sacred to them. All what they do with their bodies is sacred there. But I could not move on without speaking about one more element on that religion. And I have to confess, it was really difficult for me to speak in terms that are not offensive. And I realized that most of the words we use to describe that black culture became offensive. So it's a little bit of who came first, the egg or the chicken. The words we use to explain them became offensive because we turned them offensive because they are describing black people, or you know what I mean? Is a shape, is a circle. So I decided to reincarnate those words, and please carry with me. And I don't mean any of my words in an offensive or demeaningful way. On the opposite. So they become so entrenched inside their culture. They become so linked with nature. They become so possessed by their dancing that the elements of nature that they adore become one with them. So Saint Barbara, or the storm Orisha, comes and embodies one of the faithful there. The Saint George, the thunder, becomes one with people there. And they shape their moves, they shape their dancing, they shape their feelings in a specific way to each of those entities, to each of those saints. So, well, we can see religions that are synchronized everywhere around the world, and it's pretty simple to imagine all the different elements of nature that become embodied on people. But one element became very expressive to me. So I was asking my friend after eating that wonderful food, after sitting there for 4.5 hours, seeing them dancing and being almost embodied myself with some of those natural elements. So as I left, I started asking more questions. So what about so-and-so Orisha? I always heard about this and that. And I asked about one specific Orisha. Her name is Nana. And it just blew my mind off. Nana is the Orisha that links life and death. But she is represented on the mud in the swamp. It's not on the thunder, it's not on the storm, it's not on the ocean, it's not on the sun, but in simple mud. And if you've ever been to a swamp, you know how stinky that mud can be. Why do you have an Orisha, a saint, that presides over mud? That doesn't seem like your religion at all. And then he said, well, that Orisha was present throughout the creation of humankind. And she was the one who lent the mud to shape the body of human beings. And she's the one who comes at the end of our life to collect the mud back. She is represented not only on the mud, but she is also the goddess. She is portrayed in a figure of a senior woman. The thunder is always a young, bloody man, and the storm is always a strong woman, very young and very very quick and fast in their pace and everything. But this Orisha, this saint, is portrayed in an old woman. And her strength is not physical, but in the wisdom and the affection to all living beings. She manifests a season of life that comes to all of us. And in that religion, there is a place for all seasons of lives, not just the strong and the powerful ones. And that religion sees a wisdom in every season of our life. Her moves, the moves of Nana, are very simple, and her dance is gentle and full of affection. When Nana manifests herself in a young woman, she bends over, and her moves of dancing is like picking up children from the floor. So she pretty much helps all the children to stand up and collect children. When she embodies an older woman, her moves are even more gentler. She becomes more quieter, more centered, and she carries her instruments like if she's carrying babies. And that's how they face death and life. Life and death is linked from the beginning to end. It's like one movement. And we are all babies, we are all children, we are all in the cradling of life. We are all taken care of by this natural experience that we all call life. So Nana represents that death is seen as a common element of nature, a natural development of life, end and beginning are present in all aspects of human life. As opposing a Christianism or Western culture, death is not a failure, just like life is not. Death is not punishment for our sins. Death is not a loss. Death is not to be conquered, but to let go. Nana is the figure of gentleness caring for all of us, and the gentleness of all of us caring for all of us. A very different way to see life and death events. Nana is the grandmother taking us in her embrace, like little children full of vulnerabilities and needs. Nana is the wisdom of some black people who tell us to not fear life and not to fear death, to not despair before nature, to not see nature as our enemies, but as our basic feature and our final home. Candomblé is the wisdom of some black people who tell us that not only black life matters, but also black culture matters, black history matters, and the black wisdom can also fulfill the flaws on our own wisdom. Thank you very much.
In this world where all is sacred, may we join our voices and share our prayers as we speak these words together. We embrace the sacredness of all life as we work toward the vision of the world as it could be. We seek an awareness of the very moment, ensuring only that we and our neighbors have enough for today. We pray that we might let go of all that clings as guilt and embrace relationships of trust, offering and receiving forgiveness as a way to freedom. May we live examined lives, inspired to find meaning and purpose in our living, working to transform every challenge into an opportunity to grow and thrive. May it ever be so.
And by changing this light, we remember ourselves, that when we take care of each other, our actions are sacred. We remember ourselves, that when we believe, we embody our beliefs.